Hello everyone and welcome back to my modding tutorial. So last time we discussed metadata a bit and kind of went over textures very briefly. And I know I said I was going to do a meta block this episode, but I think we should do the meta item first because some of that will carry over to the block because whenever you have a block, a meta block, you actually need a custom item block for it. So I thought it'd be good to start with the meta item instead, since some of that will carry over. So I've actually made some preparations ahead of time, so hopefully we won't run into any major issues. I've already updated the localization file. I've borrowed some textures from the Fun Auras mod, so we don't have to make them. So as you can see, we're going to be doing copper, tin, silver, and lead, so just kind of some standard metals here. And I've already got the mod items file updated, so again, you add a variable to store your item in, preferably. You create an instance of that new item, you register it, and you do your recipes and your ore dictionary stuff. Same as with the other items that we've done in the past. Okay, so what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to create an enumeration to store some data about our ingots and the corresponding ores whenever we make that next episode. So I'm going to create this enum in my lib package, same as the names. You can put it wherever you want. It makes sense to me to put it here. So we're going to right click on the package, go to new, and enum as in enumeration. This is kind of like a class, but a bit different. So we're going to call this enum metal. Sounds good to me. And we're going to have 4 values for this enumeration. We are going to have copper, and I'm going to create a custom constructor for these. Let me go ahead and just type them out first. Copper, tin, silver, lead, in whatever order you want. Now I'm going to give them 2 parameters for their constructor, I think it is. I'm going to give them a number starting with 0 and counting up, and a name, which I'm just going to put in the name of the metal with the first letter capitalized. With the way I've used this so far, you could probably argue that I should probably just put it in lowercase, but it doesn't really matter. Okay, and that needs a semicolon at the end. So there's the values of our enumeration. So they're going to need 2 variables. I'll go ahead and make them private and they can be final. One is going to be the meta, which will correspond to the metadata of the items and ores that use this enumeration. And a string to store the name value that I'm passing in. And I should probably state you don't need to use an enumeration to do this, but if you do, it will make updating to 1.8 a bit easier, since when I updated gems to 1.8, as far as I know, you were required to use an enumeration if you had meta blocks and items. And this is just a pretty good solution overall. There's a lot you can do with this to make your life a lot easier, so I recommend it. Okay, we're just creating a constructor. It can be private since we're only calling it within the enumeration itself, and just assign the meta and the name. Easy enough, and that fixes the errors that we were getting. Okay, and there's 3 more methods I want to add here, only 2 that we need. Since we made those 2 variables private, since they're final, I guess you could just make them public, and that would be all good. Or you could use getter methods, which is what I'm going to do. I guess since they're final, it probably would have been better to just make them public, but it'll work the same either way. And I'm going to have one more. It's not really needed, it's just kind of a little convenience to reduce keystrokes. I'm going to create a static method called count, and that is going to return the length of the values array. the values array is an array that contains every value of this enumeration, if it will show it to me. Not going to show that to me? Okay. Well, that returns an array with these elements in it, which is something pretty useful. And again, the count is not really necessary. That just kind of makes it a little bit shorter and easier to read. Okay, so we're done with this, so we can go ahead and create our item now. So same as before, creating a new class. Let's call it just item ingot. And that needs to extend net.minecraft.item.item, as always. Okay, so since we're going to have multiple items with different item icons or textures, we're going to want an array to store those item icons. So I'm going to make it protected so that if you were extending this class, you could still access that, but you don't really need to access this outside of the class. And that's the only variable we need. So we can go ahead and make a constructor. We want to do set has subtypes to true. And we want to set the max damage to 0. Okay, and the reason we do set max damage to 0 is because we're not using the meta value to store damage. We're using it to store separate items. It's not like a tool where the meta value is being used to store the damage on the tool. Okay, and we do set unlocalized name. Again, I don't think this actually does anything the way I'm using it. So that may not even be necessary. Let's try without that. I've got a habit of doing that, but after I was looking at it while creating a tutorial, I was starting to think that it's not doing anything for me. Okay, and we'll set the creative tab. And it should be everything we need for the constructor. Okay, and let's go ahead and add in the add recipes and the add or dictionary. And we could go ahead and do the or dictionaries. That'll be easy enough. So I guess in this case it's actually good that I capitalize the names in here, since that'll make this a lot easier. So we're going to want to go over every ingot in this item, that's 4 ingots total, and register them in the or dictionary. So how can we iterate over that? Well, we've actually got this enumeration here, and we can get an array out of that, so we could just enumerate over that. So we're going to say for enum metal metal in enum metal.values, we are going to need an item stack to register. So I'll just call it stack. So the stack is going to be of this item, stack size of 1, and the meta value is going to be metal.getMeta. And if you chose not to do the getter and setter methods, that'd just be metal.meta. Okay, let's organize those imports. And this is one reason I recommend using the enumeration. If you want to, for some reason, you could, for example, refer to copper by name and get the meta value for that, for example. And it's just really nice being able to do the for each loop here and iterate over that collection. Okay, and as I believe we've done before, just going to register or, and the ID is ingot. And here's another reason the enum is kind of useful. Metal.getName. And our or is the stack. So the getName is going to return these name values we entered up here. So this will be ingot copper, ingot tin, etc. Alright, so we've just registered the or dictionary entries for our ingots using a for loop. And Say, for example, you had a mod with like 100 ingots in it. A bit unrealistic, but as an example, your add or dictionary function would be the same length because you've just done it in a loop. No need to do each one individually. So that's very nice. Lots of typing saved. Okay, so we're going to want to override get unlocalized name, as I believe we've been doing. But this is going to be a little bit different since we've got some different items within our item. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get the meta value on that stack and store it in an integer. Just call it metadata. And to do that, we do stack.getItemDamage. Okay, and now I want to get the metal that we're referring to here, because we're getting the unlocalized name for this specific stack. So, for example, that'd be the unlocalized name of copper or tin or whatever. So let's call that metal, and we're going to refer to that values array again. And since it's an array, we can just index into it and give it the metadata as the index. And that's the metal that our stack is referring to. Okay, and then this is going to be pretty similar to what we've done before. We'll use our localization helper to get our item prefix. And our localized name will do ingot underscore and then the name of the metal in lowercase. So we're going to do metal.getName, and we're going to convert it to lowercase. And that will be, for example, item.tutorialmod : ingot copper, for example, or ingot tin, whatever the ingot is. And there's some other ways you could do it. The way I often do it in Silence Gems is it'll be instead of having a name for everything, since this is kind of an older mod, it would be like Gem 0, then Gem 1, Gem 2, and you could just use whatever makes sense for whatever you're working on. You don't have to give a specific name to everything, but since we've got the enumeration here, might as well. Okay, so now we're going to want to override a new method that I don't believe we've used before, called getSubItems. This takes a few parameters. It passes in the item itself, which seems a bit redundant, but okay. A creative tab, which I'm not really sure what the purpose of that is, and a list. So what we do with this method is we take the list that we're given and we add item stacks to that for every stack that we want to display in our creative tab or in any eye or wherever we're displaying our items. Okay, so another interesting thing about getSubItems is you don't have to add everything. If there's some items that you want to hide, you could do that. And you don't necessarily have to return them in the order of their meta value. You could, for example, in super multi-drills, let me actually bring that up. Oh, I don't actually have it added. Hang on. I reinstalled Windows recently. Let me just find that file really quickly. But in super multi-drills, I have some drill heads that I added in like later on in development, and they would be in a totally random order otherwise, but instead I'm actually organizing them into groups, so the order you see them in any eye is not by the order of their meta value. Of course, we are going to be just doing the meta value here, since that makes the most sense. So let me see if I could just find getSubItems right here. Yeah, so in this case, I'm actually iterating over a list of the groups of the drill heads, and then in that group, I'm iterating over all the drill heads and adding those in. What we're going to be doing is a bit more simple than that. So again, what can we iterate over? Well, we got the enum metal, so why don't we use that again? I mean, that's what it's there for. Okay, so same for each loop as before. And let me actually organize those imports. And we want to add to the list an item stack for each item that we want to display. So we could use this, or we could put in item. Let's use the item that it's giving us, just to be on the safe side. And the metadata is the meta of the metal that we're using, same as before. So pretty simple. And again, you can do some more complex stuff with this method if you want to. Alright, so we're almost done. We just need to get the item icons and actually use them. So we're going to do register our icons. And that takes an icon register. Call it reg. And okay, so we haven't actually initialize our icons array, so let's do that here. And how many elements is it going to have? Well, that's easy. enum metal.count. Okay, and let's create a string that will be the prefix for all of the ingot's texture names. And I don't think I've shown that. Let me pull it up. Okay, well I did actually show it. It's ingot underscore and then the name of the metal in lowercase. So we are going to want our resource prefix. And we're going to append to that ingot underscore. And that will be the prefix for all of our texture names. Okay, and once again, we're going to iterate over enum metal. Okay, so icon sub metal.getMeta. We're using new metadata as the indexes for our icons array. And we're going to register our icon. So it'll be the prefix string that we created up above. And then we're going to get the name of our metal and convert it to lowercase. Pretty simple, right? Okay, now there's just one more thing to do. We need to actually tell it what icons to use for which items. For which item stacks, I guess you could say. So we're going to override another method. Get icon from damage. Takes one parameter, the meta or damage value. And just to play it safe, let's go ahead and check the metadata value that it's giving us to make sure it's a valid range. So it'll have to be greater than or equal to 0 and less than enum metal.count in order for it to fit into that array. If that's correct, then we can just return icon sub meta. If that's not correct, we'll just return null, because that's better than crashing. Okay, and we should be done here. So again, we've got the set has subtypes to true, set max damage to 0. We're overriding get unlocalized name, pretty similar to before, except that we have to have a different name for each possible sub-item. Then we're returning all of our sub-items for displaying in creative tabs and NEI. We're registering all the icons that we need, and we're telling it which icon to use for which meta value. And I believe I've already got that all added into our mod items as before. I've also added a generic name constant for a metal ingot, although I don't think we're actually using that, are we? No. Or, oh yeah, it is actually being registered with the item. Okay. So this should be all functional unless I'm forgetting something. I don't think I am. But let's try it out. Okay, and I am actually using a slightly more recent version of Forge than I started with. I'm using 1448 now. Okay, let's load up our test world. It's not going to be the same test world as before since I reinstalled. But if we go to our creative tab, we should have all of our ingots here. Got all their localizations. And that's pretty much all there is to say about it. We've got 4 different items that are all in the same item ID. You can see they're all 4389. They just have a different meta value assigned to them. And to give with items, the possible range of meta values you can have is, I think, a signed 16-bit integer. So you could go up to like 32,768 or something close to that, I think. So you could have a lot of items packed into a single item ID if you wanted to. I typically just pack items that are similar together, like I'll have all the ingots in one item ID and so on. So I think that's pretty much all there is to say about this. So next episode we will do a meta block, unless I can think of some reason not to again. Shouldn't be too hard since we've already built a meta item. We'll have to kind of build onto this concept a little bit to do the meta block. But I think that's all I have to say. So I'll go through this file and comment it. If there's something you're still not clear about, go click the link in the description to go to the GitHub for this project. I'll be uploading all these files to GitHub after I've commented them. I try my best to explain everything. I don't know how good I am at it. Probably not very. But as always, if you're enjoying the series and you haven't already subscribed, don't forget you can do that. And I will see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.